The sands of time are constantly shifting, burying the past and revealing the future in unexpected ways. We dig through the dunes to find the stories that were meant to be remembered forever. Hit subscribe now and don't let these moments slip away. On the evening of March 4th, 2024, my son-in-law sat across from me at my own kitchen table, the same table where I had fed my daughter every morning before school for 18 years, and told me, very gently, very reasonably, that I might be happier somewhere smaller. He used the word happier, like he was doing me a favor. 6 months before that conversation ended, I was standing on a cobblestone terrace in Portugal, watching the Douro River catch the last of the evening light in sheets of copper and rose gold, holding a glass of Douro Valley Red that cost more than my son-in-law's monthly payment on the Tesla he couldn't quite afford. My phone had 14 missed calls from my daughter. I let every one of them go to voicemail. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Georgia May Harmon. I'm 66 years old, and for 33 years I worked as a registered nurse in the cardiac ICU at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee. I held the hands of people on the worst days of their lives. I watched families make impossible decisions at 2 in the morning. I stayed late when I didn't have to, came in early when no one asked me to, and memorized the names of children in the photographs my patients kept taped to their bed rails. I mention this because my daughter's husband once told his business school friends, within earshot of my kitchen, that I had never really been in a high-pressure professional environment. He said this while eating the lasagna I had spent 4 hours making for his birthday dinner. But I am getting ahead of myself again. My husband Vernon and I were married for 37 years. Vernon Harmon was the principal at Pearl-Cohn High School in North Nashville. 6'2", quiet-voiced. The kind of man who never had to raise his voice because people simply listened to him. He ran a Saturday morning tutoring program he funded from his own pocket for the first 6 years, before he convinced donors to step in. He loved jazz and chess and me, in that particular order on most days, though he would never have admitted the ranking out loud. Vernon died on November 18, 2021. A massive stroke, here one afternoon and gone by evening. 37 years of marriage, and I didn't get a proper goodbye. The paramedics told me he likely hadn't suffered. I don't know if they said that because it was true, or because they'd learned it was what surviving spouses needed to hear in the first 10 minutes of becoming widows. Our house on Shelby Avenue in East Nashville is a 1935 Craftsman bungalow with 3 bedrooms, hardwood floors Vernon refinished by hand one summer, and a front porch with hanging ferns I have maintained every season for 28 years. We bought it in 1993 for $89,000. By the time Vernon died, the neighborhood had transformed around us. Boutique restaurants where the hardware store used to be. Young professionals in houses that sold for 10 times what ours had cost. I didn't need anyone to tell me what the property was worth. I could see it in the way people slowed their cars down driving past. My daughter was 34 when her father died. She had married her husband 2 years before, a man I will call my son-in-law, because that is the most accurate and the most honest thing I can say about him. He worked in tech ventures. Not in tech, exactly, but in the adjacent world of pitching and funding and pivoting, where a great deal of energy is spent describing what something will be, rather than doing what it is. He was charming in that specific way, warm to the people whose opinions could matter to him, politely indifferent to everyone else. My daughter loved him, I loved her, I tried. 8 months after Vernon died, my daughter called on a Sunday evening while I was sitting on the back porch watching the fireflies come up in the yard. "Mama, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think about it before you answer." She and her husband were in a tight spot. His latest venture had entered what she called a restructuring phase, which I eventually understood to mean the investors had walked away. They were paying $2,400 a month in rent in Germantown, carrying loan payments and business debt, and they were struggling. They needed, just temporarily, just until they got back on their feet, somewhere to land. "We'd help with bills," she said. "We wouldn't be any trouble." I had 3 empty bedrooms. I had a house full of silence so heavy I'd started leaving the television on overnight just to have a voice in the rooms. "Come home," I said. "Stay as long as you need." They moved in on a Saturday in July with 7 boxes of clothing, 12 boxes labeled studio equipment and tech gear, and my son-in-law's standing desk that required 45 minutes and an instructional video to assemble in my guest room. He stood in the center of my living room, looked around slowly, and said, "Just temporarily. We really appreciate this." That was 20 months ago. The changes started in the second week. My son-in-law needed a dedicated workspace for his calls. Sensitive, confidential, requiring a door that closed. The guest room became his office. The bedroom furniture went to the garage. Then he needed better lighting, so the floor lamp I'd owned for 15 years got relocated to the hallway where, he explained, it balanced the energy of the space better. My daughter said nothing. Month 2. He had begun a new protocol involving no gluten, no dairy, no nightshades, and a refrigerator drawer I was asked not to use because his supplements required consistent temperature. Grocery deliveries arrived in branded paper bags he stacked in my kitchen for Roos. My daughter said nothing. They contributed $300 a month toward household expenses. The mortgage was $2,600. Utilities averaged $420. Taxes, insurance, maintenance. The house cost me roughly $4,000 a month to keep. They were covering less than 8% of that, but they were family. That was what I told myself. I still cooked on Sundays. 37 years of Sunday dinners had made it reflex. My grandmother's recipes, her mother's recipes, food that took time and love and produced leftovers that stretched through Tuesday. My pot roast braised in red wine and herbs, cornbread from scratch in the cast iron skillet my mother left me, sweet potato pie with a brown sugar crust that my Vanderbilt colleagues had requested at every department gathering for 2 decades. One Sunday, I set the pot roast on the table, and my son-in-law looked at it the way you'd look at something in a museum you don't quite understand. "Oh, we actually ordered from that new bowl place on 5 Points. We figured you'd have your own thing going." He smiled pleasantly. "The pot roast looks great, though. Very classic." My daughter looked at her delivery bowl and didn't meet my eyes. I put the pot roast in the refrigerator and ate alone at the kitchen table, the way I had been doing since November of 2021. September came. I was deadheading the roses along the back fence. Vernon had planted them in our 20th year of marriage, 1 cane for each year, when I heard my son-in-law's voice through the open kitchen window. He was pacing on the phone, performing the kind of relaxed confidence that is meant to sound unstudied. "No, she's fine. She kind of potters around, cooking, the garden, whatever. It's basically a free situation for us right now, so..." A pause. His voice lowered, but the still morning air carried it perfectly. "Oh, it's definitely not forever. There are some really nice 55-plus communities out in Brentwood. She's 66, it's the right age for that kind of thing." I stood with my garden shears in my hand and dirt on my knees. "It's the right age for that kind of thing." He was 38 years old. He had never planted anything in his life. He had never held a stranger's hand through the night to keep them alive. And in his easy, restructuring phase voice, he had just counted out the years he believed I had left in my own house like he was reading a lease expiration. I set down the shears, I walked inside, I made coffee. I did not say one word, I needed a plan first. March 4th was a Monday. I was at the kitchen table with my coffee when my son-in-law appeared in the doorway at 7:45, already holding his phone. "Georgia, do you have a minute? We wanted to talk to you about something." My daughter came in behind him and sat down. She wore an expression I recognized from her childhood. The look she got when she already knew something uncomfortable was coming and had decided in advance she wasn't going to be the one to say it. My son-in-law sat across from me. He folded his hands. He had prepared this. "We want to be honest with you because we love you and we respect you too much not to be." A pause. "The truth is, we're at a point in our lives where we really need our own space, our own home, somewhere to build toward our future. And honestly, Georgia, at your stage of life, this house is a lot. The maintenance, the yard, the stairs." He set his phone on the table between us and turned the screen toward me. "There are some beautiful communities in Brentwood. We've done some research. Pool, fitness center, a garden club. People your age, your interests. You'd have your own apartment, no upkeep, no worry." He leaned back slightly. "And honestly, this place could use some updating. With the right renovation, it could really be something." There it was. "How much time are you giving me?" I asked. "End of May," my son-in-law said. "That's nearly 3 months. Plenty of time." "End of May," I repeated. 20 months in my house. $300 a month against $4,000 in expenses, and they were giving me 90 days to disappear. Okay, I said. Both of them exhaled. Okay, I'll find my own place. I'll be out by May. My son-in-law smiled his closing the deal smile, the one that reached his eyes just enough. Georgia, thank you. Really, we knew you'd be reasonable about this. I stood up, picked up my coffee, and said I had some calls to make. I climbed to the bedroom Vernon and I had shared on Shelby Avenue and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were steady. My chest felt clear and cold and deliberate, the particular clarity that used to come over me in the ICU when everything went wrong at once, and I was the person who had to know what to do next. I went to the back of the closet, behind the winter coats, and lifted down the metal lockbox Vernon had shown me the night before our daughter's wedding. He'd said, "You won't need this for a long time, but when you need it, you'll know." The combination was the date we moved into this house, August 12, 1993. I had remembered it every year and never once turned the dial. I turned it now. Vernon's letter was 3 pages, written on yellow legal paper, his handwriting careful and unhurried the way it always was. Georgia May, if you're reading this, I've been gone long enough for you to need what's in this box. I hope it was long enough. I hope you had more good years before you opened it than bad ones. I have to tell you something I should have said while I was alive. In 2004, after we paid off the car and I got the assistant principal position, I started putting money away. Not much at first, $200 a month in a separate account. I know how that sounds. But I watched my father lose everything he'd saved because people got involved after he died, and I swore I would never let anything stand between you and what you deserve. In 2008, when prices dropped, I bought 2 properties through a company I set up, Vernon C. Harmon Holdings LLC. Everything is legal. Everything is in the envelope. Here is what I left you. Life insurance, $1 million. Policy number in the envelope. I let you think the smaller policy was all there was. I'm sorry for that. Teacher's pension, $48,000 per year, guaranteed for your lifetime. Contact the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. Number is in the envelope. Investment accounts through Fidelity, 3 accounts. Total value as of December 2021, approximately $740,000. 2 rental properties. A duplex on Buchanan Street, a 4-unit on Meridian Avenue. Combined value approximately $420,000. A property manager named Elaine has been handling them. She's been depositing the income into the holdings account. Georgia, I was a high school principal for 32 years. I drove used cars and graded papers on weeknights and built this quietly because I didn't know any other way to say what you meant to me. Whatever you do next, do something bold. You spent 33 years making sure other people didn't die. You are allowed to live. All my love, always Vernon. I read it twice, then I opened the documents. Life insurance, $1 million. Beneficiary, Georgia May Harmon. I had believed that after Vernon's medical bills there was almost nothing left. I had been wrong about nearly everything. Fidelity account statements from October 2021, $741 across 3 accounts. Property records for both Harmon Holdings buildings, and a handwritten note. Elaine Pryor at Pryor Property Group has been managing both. Income to account ending 4471. Get access. I called Elaine Pryor first. She had been waiting 2.5 years for my call. Meridian Avenue brought in $4,200 a month. Buchanan Street brought in $2,800. $7,000 a month that had been accumulating in an account I didn't know existed for 26 months. $182,000, sitting untouched. Then I called the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System about Vernon's pension. The representative pulled the file. The payments of $4,000 per month had been depositing since February 2022. She read me the last 4 digits of the receiving account. They were not my account numbers. I asked whose name was on it. A pause. It shows a joint account, Mrs. Harmon, in your name and a Jordan Webb. Jordan Webb was my son-in-law's legal name, a detail he had never mentioned to me in 20 months of dinners and shared living space and polite conversation about his business plans. When was that account opened? I asked quietly. June 14th, 2022, 7 months after Vernon died, while I was still crying in the shower so my daughter wouldn't hear me. I thanked the representative, Told her I'd be in touch, and sat with the phone in my lap for a very long time. Then I got dressed, my good navy slacks, the cream blouse, the flats I'd worn to nursing conferences, and drove to see an attorney. Robert Osie's office was on Charlotte Avenue, 4th floor, windows overlooking downtown Nashville. He was a Ghanaian American man in his early 60s with the kind of calm that reminded me of the best attending physicians I'd ever worked beside. The ones who made you feel, no matter what was happening, that there was a way through. He listened to everything without interrupting. Then, Mrs. Harmon, what your son-in-law did with the pension account, opening a joint account in your name without your knowledge, diverting your funds, that is financial elder abuse. It is a felony in Tennessee. I know, I said. Do you want to pursue criminal charges? I thought about my daughter at the kitchen table that morning, not meeting my eyes. Not yet, I said. I want to understand my options first. He read Vernon's codicil twice, then he looked up. This is a conditional property transfer. The title moved to your daughter's name for estate purposes, but the codicil specifies you retain right of occupancy indefinitely and the right to authorize a sale with proceeds held in your name. He set the paper down. Your son-in-law has been planning to renovate a house he has no legal authority to give away. Can I sell it? With documentation, yes. Given the eviction pressure they've placed you under, implied consent is arguable. He paused. The question is what you want. I looked out the window at Nashville laid out below us in the late afternoon light. I want to sell it, I said. And I want to be somewhere else entirely before they understand what's happening. Robert Osie's expression shifted into something that wasn't quite a smile but was close to one. The next 2 weeks moved in 2 registers, visible and invisible. Visibly, I attended a tour of Winding Brook Senior Living, brought home the brochure, left it on the kitchen counter where my son-in-law would find it. I mentioned I was seriously considering the Garden View units. He nodded with satisfaction. Invisibly, I sat across from a financial advisor named Angela Shore downtown, who reorganized my assets, filed the insurance claim, opened new accounts in my name only, arranged wire transfers to a Portuguese bank, and said, with the particular steadiness of someone who does this work regularly, Mrs. Harmon, you're going to be fine. I listed the Shelby Avenue house through an agent who specialized in quiet sales. Cash buyers only, no online listings, serious inquiries only. The house showed once, on a Thursday while my daughter and her husband were at work. The buyers were a couple in their early 30s. She taught 4th grade at a school 2 miles away. He was an ER nurse at Vanderbilt, the same hospital where I had spent 33 years of my life. They walked through every room slowly, the way people walk through places they already love. When the woman stopped in my kitchen and put her hand flat on the counter and said, "This feels like a home," I knew. They offered the asking price in cash. We set a closing date of May 12th. I told them about the roses Vernon had planted. I asked if they'd keep them. She looked at me over her shoulder. We'll learn their names. Easter Sunday. I cooked the way you cook when you mean it. The full inheritance of every woman in my family who fed people through hard years and ordinary ones. Pot roast braised in red wine and garden herbs. Deviled eggs with smoked paprika. Cornbread from my grandmother's cast iron skillet. Sweet potato pie with a brown sugar crust. My son-in-law had invited 2 colleagues. He'd also ordered a charcuterie spread for what he called variety, which arrived in branded boxes and took up half my kitchen counter. After the meal over pie, I set down my fork. I've made a decision about housing. I wanted everyone to hear it together. My son-in-law looked up from his phone. My daughter looked at me, really looked, for the first time in months. Winding Brook, my son-in-law said. No, I said, I found something better. Another community, my daughter said. Porto, I said, Portugal. I've rented an apartment overlooking the Douro River, furnished. 3rd floor, 2 terraces, a building from 1910 with better bones than anything built in Nashville in the last 30 years. I picked up my coffee cup. I leave May 16th. My son-in-law's boardroom tone left his voice for the first time since I'd known him. The title is conditional. I have an attorney who can walk you through the specifics. I looked at him steadily. The house closes May 12th. New owners take possession May 15th. You'll need to find somewhere to live before then. 6 weeks is generous, I'm told. The table was very quiet. The pension account, I said, keeping my voice even, Has been frozen pending review. I'll be following up on that through a separate process. My son-in-law stared. My daughter said, "Mama, I didn't know about the account." "I believe you," I said. And I did. That was what was most difficult, that she probably hadn't known, that she had simply not looked, that she had lived in my house for 20 months and never once asked where her father's pension was going. "I love you," I told her. "I'll call you when I land." I left the sweet potato pie with my neighbor 2 doors down. The woman who had brought me soup every week for the first 6 months after Vernon died, and spent the evening on her porch while the neighborhood settled into darkness around us. When I came home, the charcuterie boxes were still on my kitchen counter. I broke them down for the recycling bin. Then I went to bed and slept better than I had in 4 years. I landed in Porto on the morning of May 17th, Lisbon first, then the northbound train along the coast. I slept most of the flight, the deep sleep of someone who has been braced for a long time and whose body has finally accepted it can let go. A woman named Dora, who ran an expat welcome service, met me at the station. She was Portuguese-American, silver-haired, wearing sandals, and carrying 2 coffees. She had sent me exactly 2 WhatsApp messages before this moment, one to confirm the time and one that read simply, "Welcome to your new life, I'll have coffee." The apartment was on the 4th floor of a tiled building on a cobblestone street 10 minutes from the waterfront. 12-foot ceilings, original wood floors, a kitchen window that looked directly into the branches of a chestnut tree, and a terrace facing the Douro, wide and slow and catching the late morning light the way good rivers do, like they'd been waiting for someone to notice. I stepped out onto the terrace and put my hand on the iron railing. Vernon would have loved this. He would have stood right here in his reading glasses and said very little, the way he did when something was too good for ordinary words. He would have asked the neighbors what year the building was from. He would have found a chess club within a week. I said his name out loud into the river air. Then I went inside to unpack. The first month was disorienting in the honest ways first months are. My Portuguese was non-existent. I overtipped at cafes by mortifying margins. I went to the wrong bakery 3 times before finding the one whose pastries I actually loved. But there were small victories. A correctly ordered coffee without pointing, a whole conversation about the weather conducted entirely in halting Portuguese, while my upstairs neighbor nodded patiently and did not switch to English out of mercy. My daughter called in the 3rd week. "Mama," small voice, the way she'd sounded at 8 years old calling me at work when something had gone wrong at school. "I'm here," I said. "He's been served with a civil complaint," she said, "about the pension account." "I know. He says you're trying to destroy him." I watched a flat-bottomed boat move slow down the Douro below me. "I'm trying to recover what was taken from me," I said. "What your father worked 32 years to leave me." A pause. "I believe you didn't know about the account." "But I should have asked." Her voice fractured on the last word. "Mama, I watched him rearrange your house and I said nothing. I watched you eat dinner alone and I said nothing. I don't know what I was, scared maybe. Scared of having the fight. Scared of making everything worse." "I know," I said. I did know. I had spent 37 years learning that the people we love most can disappear into their own fear and leave us standing in the kitchen wondering what happened. "Can I come visit?" she asked. "Not to fix anything, just I want to see where you are." I looked around the apartment, the chestnut tree, Vernon's photograph on the shelf, the one from our 20th anniversary, him in his good suit, laughing at something I'd just said, the laugh he had when he forgot to control his face. "Come in September," I said. "I'll be settled. I'll teach you to make pastel de nata." She cried. I let her and let the silence after the crying be what it was. Not emptiness, but the first quiet space of something beginning to repair. The civil case settled in January. My son-in-law paid back every dollar of the diverted pension funds, plus interest, plus legal fees. My daughter filed for divorce in December. By February, she was in a small apartment in East Nashville, 2 miles from the house she grew up in, starting over at 36 with the particular bruised steadiness of someone who has finally chosen herself. She visited in September, alone, as I'd asked. We walked the river every morning before coffee, not always talking, just learning how to be near each other again. On her 3rd evening, sitting on the terrace while the city lights came on across the water in the blue dusk, she said, "I understand now." "What do you understand?" I asked. "Why you had to go all the way here just to be believed?" She was quiet a moment. "I'm sorry I made that necessary." It was the truest thing she had said to me in years. I reached over and covered her hand with mine, and we sat like that for a while, watching the river. 7 months after I arrived in Porto, I joined a cooking collective. Expat women who gathered on Sunday afternoons in a rented kitchen near the market to cook food from their home countries and feed whoever showed up. A Jamaican woman whose oxtail silenced every room. An Eritrean woman whose injera had people standing in line. A woman from Baltimore who made a crab cake the Portuguese members requested every single week without exception. I brought sweet potato pie the first Sunday. By the second Sunday, 4 people had asked me to teach them the recipe. I am teaching cooking classes now, twice a month, on a terrace I rent from a small winery in Vila Nova de Gaia across the river. American Southern food made from scratch with the history attached, where the recipes came from, what they meant, who carried them across what distances. 8 students per session, a waiting list for the next. 1 year in Porto. I am 67 years old. My total assets sit above $2.4 million, plus the pension that arrives every month like Vernon keeping his last promise from wherever he is. I live on $78,000 a year, comfortable, unhurried, nothing wasted. I bought a share in the winery that hosts my classes. I walk the river every morning. I play cards on Wednesday evenings with Dora and a retired judge named Fernanda, who beats everyone methodically and without a trace of apology. There are mornings when I take my coffee to the terrace and the light comes off the Douro in a way so specific, so unrepeatable, that I put my hand to my chest simply to confirm I am still here to see it. I spent 33 years in a cardiac ICU. I learned that the people who make it are not always the ones you would expect. Not always the strongest, not always the least damaged, not always the most prepared. Sometimes they are simply the ones who, in the critical moment, refuse to accept that what is happening to them is the end of the story. My son-in-law told me I would be happier somewhere smaller. He was right. Just not in the way he meant. If this story reached you today, drop your city in the comments. I want to know how far these words have traveled, and if you are somewhere in your life where someone has decided your chapter is over, please hear this. They don't get to decide that. You do. I promise you. The story's not over. I am 67 years old. I wake up every morning to a river in Portugal, to a life my husband built in secret so I would have somewhere to land, to a daughter who is learning who she is without someone telling her who to be. They told me to find my own place. I found it.